Whispers of Terror, the third Doctor Who Big Finish audio release, first released in 4 parts on 2 CDs in November of 1999. The Sixth Doctor, played by Colin Baker, and his companion, Purple Gillian Brown, better known as Perry, played by Nicola Bryant, arrive at the Museum of Oral Antiquities, a place where sounds from all of human history are stored for posterity. And this includes things like service wiretaps, interrogation tapes, and a lot of recordings of the late actor Vistine Crane. Now, while there, they encounter the museum curator, Guntman, played by Peter Miles, but also must somehow now deal with a set of murders that have taken place. Now, they end up finding a pair of, I don't want to say criminals or burglars or the like, but 2 people named Amber Dent, played by Rebecca Jenkins, and Goth Fotherell, who have seemingly broken into the Museum of Royal Antiquities in order to change a couple of the tapes of Vistine Crane, an actor voiced by Matthew Brenner. And one thing, eventually they have to kind of piece together a mystery as to why this all is happening. Because it turns out what is happening is that Vistine Crane, before he died, was planning to run for office. Kind of like how Donald Trump eventually ran for office. He'd been an actor, then he became a politician, and I can't remember his name at the minute. Ronald Reagan, yeah, he was an actor, and he eventually ran for office. Vistine Crane was planning to do the same, until he apparently committed suicide. Now, he was accompanied in most of his kind of acting and political career by his agent, Beth Purnell, voiced by Lisa Bowerman. And here is where, if you haven't yet listened to the story, go ahead, go and listen to it, because I'm pretty much going to have to go into heavy spoiler territory here. So, I give it a glowing endorsement. I think it's actually a really good story. If you haven't listened to it yet, go off and listen to it, and then come back. You're back? Okay. Because, yeah, it was assumed that Vistine Crane had committed suicide. Like, a lot of the audio recordings they have of him include his suicide. Like, him talking with Beth and then suddenly saying he had a gun to his head before the gun went off. But as the Doctor, Perry, and everyone kind of look into the mystery, they find that maybe things aren't quite as clear-cut as they thought. And as I said, I am going to have to go into massive spoilers here and describe exactly what's going on. Everyone has assumed that Crane had been going to run for office, to run for a position. I can't remember if it's president or prime minister or whatever, but he was planning to do so, and he was planning to have Beth Purnell as his vice president. Yeah, it was president. Okay. He was planning to run for president, and he planned to have Purnell as his agent as vice president. However, now that Crane had committed suicide, it was assumed that Beth Purnell would eventually try to run for office herself. You know, if he was going to be president and she was going to be vice president, now that he's gone, she might as well throw her own hat in the ring. But it's a little bit more complicated than that, because it's soon revealed that she actually might have had a bigger role in Crane's death than they thought, and it may not have actually been suicide, but rather murder. She had been his agent, and she had been going to be vice president, but then when he started doing things that made him look bad and meant their political career might go up in turmoil, she had him killed and now wants to gain a position of power. But there's a little bit of a problem with it, because it turns out that Crane isn't entirely dead. As they start to look through the Museum of Royal Antiquities, there's a strange creature that seems to be following them, a creature made of sound, a creature that exists within the sound waves. And it's soon discovered that Crane is actually the creature. Like, he is actually the creature made of sound, a sound creature that seems to be following them around, and they can't work out how he's doing this. But not only that, not only is Vistine Crane the sound creature, he also seems to have developed an entirely different personality, known as Miles Napton, played by Mark Trotman. And as the story goes on, Beth seems to become a little bit more deranged, as she reveals to the Doctor that she does plan to still run for president, but then use the audio recordings of Vistine Crane in order to endorse her as the new candidate. And she plans to rule over the people with an iron fist. Like, while the Doctor said, "Well, hang on, that's not the way democracy works." She's like, democracy is outdated. I mean, or at least that's what she says. Because, yeah, people need to kind of have a fist over them, somebody who's not afraid to do what needs to be done. And the way she talks, you actually hear it's quite scary. So, yeah. I mean, it does also, I think, show that... one thing I think it does very well is it does show that, especially with politics, not everything is black and white. I mean, sometimes the things that we think are monstrous can actually turn out to be more good than we realise, and the things that we think, people that we think are good, are often under dubious circumstances. I mean, not everything, as I said, is black and white. It's often speckled with shades of grey, and I feel like this story is a prime example of that. So, if you haven't listened to it already, as I said, I mean, I have just spoiled it for you now by saying all that, I definitely say give Whispers of Terror a listen. I think it's a great story. And as I said with Colin Baker in The Sirens of Time, I kind of felt like he was one of the voices who I listened to, and I could definitely hear he was a little bit rusty. He was getting back into it. Now here, both he and Nicola Bryant, they're on their A game. I don't hear that hesitation anymore. He's slipping back into the role of the Doctor, and he sounds brilliant. I will also admit Lisa Bowerman as Beth Purnell. She does a great job being sinister when she has to, and even Matthew Brenner as the sound creature and as Vistine Crane. Just everyone here is on their A game. The people who need to be creepy are creepy. The Doctor sounds dynamic while also being fun, and I think it's a great story. So, Whispers of Terror, I definitely give it a thumbs up. Now, there is still a bit of range of Big Finish for me to look through, but I'd say this was a good one. So there you go, that's my quick little review of the Doctor Who Big Finish story, The Whispers of Terror. Anyway, until next time, see ya.